Just some things before I get started. I mean, these are public matches I'm assessing them on, so there'll be a variety of add-ons, maps and offerings, as well as perks. I'll be taking into consideration that it will be on the higher MMR side of survivors, mainly, but I will take into consideration how all sides and all possible chances, as most public matches are a bit of a mixed bag. So this isn't like pure tournament standard level play. This is more just you choose the killer, you hop into a public match. Sometimes you run their add-ons, sometimes you run base kit, sometimes you run the best possible build you can, sometimes you run a meme build or a joke build, you know, that sort of thing. I'll be judging it based on the sheer mixed bag you get with that. Although obviously a lot of things cross over. So anyway, start off in S tier. Of course, the best killer in Dead by Daylight will always and probably forever be the Nurse. So, the Nurse has notoriously probably been the strongest killer ever since the game's released. She has been nerfed since her release. She usually only has 2 blinks, with sometimes the 3rd blink with one of the add-ons. She makes loops impossible. She completely different playstyle to most other killers. She did also get the basic attack nerf, where she could no longer take use of perks like Starstruck or Save the Best for Last, but she still remains the strongest. There's not really much else to say. It's the Nurse. Her add-ons are pretty good. They're not necessarily super strong, except for a few examples. There's also a few bad ones, pretty bad ones. I think the main counter to the Nurse is maps. So maps like the game, the Nurse will dominate, but even then, on bigger maps, the Nurse is still just fine. I think the biggest enemy for the Nurse is some funky map collisions, like the ones on Toba Landing, or the big Macmillan wall that she can't go through, because it's the way the game's coded with the walls. Otherwise, very, very little proper counterplay, really. There is counterplay to the Nurse. I like to make sure there's as many objects between us as possible before she blinks, because it makes it harder to blink. Obviously, the Nurse has the lowest kill rate in most kill rate graphs, which is to be given, because she's very, very hard to learn for newbies, and is the only killer that is slower than survivors on base kit movement speed. Otherwise, very strong killer. If you just want to win games, then learn this killer and you will do just fine. So next, we have the Hillbilly. So, Billy, as most of the community call him, got his chainsaw nerfed a while back, which was the cooldown. I mean, you can't use the chainsaw if you rev it too much. The devs have basically reversed this into the overcharge, where Billy's saw will actually become overpowered the more you use it. The cooldown is now a good thing, so when it triggers, your chainsaw will glow blue, and you have bigger turn rate and you move much faster. This addition has made Billy very, very strong, and he was already very strong before they added the cooldown. I think Billy, a good Hillbilly, can outperform the Nurse sometimes. His ability to just snowball the rest of the game with his insta-down and his saw. But of course he also has some of the add-ons that make it so he can bounce around pallets and loops. In the PTB they have nerfed Overcharge, although it's not to a massive effect. I think he will still be in the same place in the tier list here. If anything, it will just encourage more cooldown add-ons for his Overcharge. Hillbilly's speed gives him a big advantage on bigger maps compared to other killers. I think his biggest enemy, I think his biggest enemy is probably indoor maps, but even then, or just again funky collisions on some maps. Yeah, his add-ons are okay. I think again the strongest ones are the ones that makes him go through loops. But Like the engravings, I think it is. It might be the engravings, I might be wrong. Otherwise, a really strong killer as well. I think counterplay to Hillbilly is just playing around windows, but most billies will run bamboozle. So this is another killer that probably gets played a lot more, so his kill rates are probably on average. Again, it is quite hard to control for a new player, so. But otherwise, very strong kill. So the last one in S tier is the Blight. Oh, the Blight. So Blight got his hug tech removed a while back, although it didn't really affect his position. It just meant the skill expression of the Blight was slightly removed. Because instead of trying to play around the palette, he'd just break it and then try and catch up to you instantly. Blight used to be a lot more powerful when he had his stronger add-ons, like the old Alchemist Ring and the old Eries. They've been nerfed, brought back a little bit, reined in a little bit. I think he's in a much fairer place these days. I think Blight's biggest strength is his ability to just counteract what most killers. So when a killer injures a survivor, let's say survivor gets a speed boost and the chase goes on. Blight can completely counter this. If there's not a loop nearby after you smack someone, you can just instantly catch up to them and down them. If they're into the open, they're as good as dead. That's why Blight actually performs really well on open large maps like Coldvent, the cornfields, or Ormond. I think his biggest problem is, again, a very common thing so far, is the funky collisions with the bump. Especially since they removed the hug tech, it's a lot harder to control the glide. Sometimes you want to glide, sometimes you'll glide by accident by sliding off of a rock and losing your rush. It has been reined in a little bit. It's a lot better than it used to be, definitely. But I think Blight is a very good example of an unlimited skill cap on a killer, because I don't think they should nerf him, at least his base kit anyway. Some of his add-ons are still very strong, but I think his unlimited skill cap is very healthy for the game. You will get the sweaty Blights with the 5000 DPI that can 360 you around the loop, but I think it's good because it encourages you to learn this killer. I think this killer is very fun. I enjoy this killer. He's definitely my favourite of the top tiers. Although again, it has its downsides compared to the other two at least. Moving on to a tier below, we have the Singularity. Now, Singularity I nearly put in S tier except for one big reason, which I'll get into in a minute. But Singularity has very strong map presence, some very nice add-ons to go along with it. A while back they reworked him, in quotations, basically buffed every aspect of his kit with the EMP nerfs. He got some nice changes to the UI as well. Completely counters the main chase power of the game if set up his network of cameras correctly. This killer will just bounce between survivors, injuring, downing them, hooking them, and there's very little they can do about it. So why is he not an S tier? It's because of indoor maps like Midwich, Lerries or Hawkins. These maps make it very hard for the Singularity to set up some wide cameras. He's one of the few killers that really benefit from larger maps like Ormond, rather than these small indoor maps, because it's very hard for the cameras to get a wide shot of survivors to easily tag them and teleport. This killer's main counters are windows, so maps with strong vaults can be a little bit of a problem, but again, these overclock mode does get faster vault speed, as well as combined with bamboozle, they really become a non-issue, and again, you can just shoot the survivor again to gain overclocked back. Strong counterplay to this is survivors knowing how his teleport works. Sometimes if you teleport to a survivor too early when they vault, you'll be stuck on the other side. Because it behaves like a ball and chain to teleport behind survivors. As well as this, I know I said loops are counted, but a good survivor can time it perfectly, where when you swing and they throw it down, you end up smacking the pallet. So not getting stunned by the pallet, you just end up smacking it, forcing you to break it. If they throw it down too late, the pallet will break and you'll hit them. It's like Spirit Fury, except you don't get stunned either. If they throw it down too early, you just be able to break it instantly and hit them anyway. But that precise timing that survivors can do can make you whiff your attack and waste precious seconds that you get in overclocked mode. But otherwise, it's still extremely strong killer. If you run map offerings or the green ward item, you'll do very well. But again, mixed bag taking into account here. These small maps, the Singularity does really struggle on, and he can be a bit of an overwhelming killer to play, as you constantly need to be checking the cameras, you constantly need to be tagging people, teleport to them once you hook someone, you're already on the other side of the map chasing someone else. It's a very active killer. You can't turn your brain off when you play this killer. I'll move on to the Spirit. Spirit has always had a really good chase power, although Iron Will bring back to 100% reduction of noises does hurt her a little bit. Although good spirits, again, you can still see the pools of blood on the floor, so she has some very strong add-ons, some that I'm still surprised haven't been nerfed, like the Bracelet, which basically removes all downsides to her power. If you don't know what it does, it removes scratch marks, but it gives you killer instinct for survivors within a certain radius of you, which if you're playing the killer correctly will often be the case, as you can figure out where they are and you'll basically get wall hacks on them. Her phasing animation's been reined in a lot since her release, and she used to be very hard to play against because of her blinking, but that doesn't really happen anymore. But again, still very strong killer. She doesn't really struggle on a lot of maps. She is a 110 killer, so she has to rely on her power to down people, but that's not really a problem. The biggest strength of the Spirit is just the mind games that come with it. The survivors basically have to play a guessing game with her a lot, and they often result in you just eventually winning and downing them. So next is the Plague. Plague has some very nice add-ons, some very mean ones if you want to really put the brain on survivors and get yourself a full bot match when they all DC. She's very good at keeping pressure around the map. The biggest strength, I think, comes with solo survivors that aren't coordinating their cleansing, or that there's always a to cleanse or not to cleanse mind game that goes on. Some people cleanse, some people don't. Sometimes it's better not to, sometimes better is to. It's really up to the match going on. Most people will just cleanse and end up giving her power. I think her biggest weakness is large maps, because she has no movement ability. But again, her vomit is a very strong ranged attack, especially when in Corrupt Purge. If you know how the projectile works, you can figure out and get these really nasty shots on survivors. I think her big counterplay is to stun her with a pallet, which will delete the power, deletes Corrupt Purge if you didn't know that. If you stun the Plague, it removes her power. She goes back to Vile Purge afterwards. Obviously against coordinated teams that know what they're doing, know how to avoid your vomit, because sometimes it's a bit funky to control. If you're not used to it, it might feel a bit weird. But again, I'm just thinking of all the shots you can do when you aim up in the sky and get it to land on survivors. A very strong killer, and very underrated killer at that. So moving on to the Oni. So the Oni is a very strong killer. It's very, very good at getting a snowball effect in the match, as well as just when the original finisher Mori system was implemented, where if you downed everyone, the game would end. The Oni was the best killer in the game, because you'd insta-down everyone with Infectious Fright and you could win the game. So he has quite a nice skill cap with like the flicks and the 360s you can do down loops. Good Onis will do this and just get free insta downs. His add-ons are kind of terrible. No, they're not awful, but the main ones you want are the ones that increase your power. I think the main weakness of the Oni is getting that first hit on the survivor, as until you start getting blood orbs, you are just an M1 killer, and good survivors know this. If you go after the strongest survivor on the team first, it can be very detrimental for the rest of the game, as you're just wasting precious time to get blood orbs around the map. Some counterplay I've seen myself as well is survivors. There is a limit how many blood orbs can be on the map, and some survivors will know this. I remember on huge maps like the Swamp, they can purposely leave blood orbs in hard to get to places, or places you have to go out of your way to get to. 9 times out of 10 this won't happen, or you can just absorb them and get your power, but it's worth noting for stronger teams. So yeah, but otherwise very strong killer. Next is Chucky, who would be a bit higher, maybe not a lot higher, but a bit higher. But he got nerfed. He can no longer scamper without running in his power. So this isn't a huge difference. I think it just stops you getting some free hits, some pretty cheesy hits that can feel very unfair to the survivor side, so I'm glad they removed that. He's still got very strong power that can flick onto survivors. And if you know what you're doing, you can still run under pallets and get the flick with Slice and Dice. He has 110 killers, so he needs his power to run on hits, but and sometimes the cooldowns, I think the cooldowns got buffed since the Slice and Dice nerf, but it's still, survivors can still play around with cooldowns a little bit. Because if you miss your ability, you're stuck on cooldown, and the survivor has time to run to the next loop, or next powerful set of results, jungle gems. He's actually, I think he has a mini stealth when into Slice and Dice, charging up his power. He loses, becomes an undetectable killer, which can get some free hits and catch people off guard. His size is also a huge benefit to inexperienced players because he is very good at catching people off guard. And teams that aren't even, they don't even have to be bad. Teams that aren't a bit average, can fall victim to this. A strong Chucky will snowball the rest of the game. So Wesker I put next. Wesker has very good chase power and has very good pressure without having to actually do anything. What I mean by this is when you grab someone, obviously they get infected with Ouroboros. So Ouroboros did get a slight nerf. I say slight, probably pretty big one. Is when hooked, its infection rate will now go down to 1%. So you can't. It's a lot harder to tunnel that one person out of the game. Although it's still a very passive thing that Wesker really doesn't have to do anything for it to build up. And survivors are basically forced to reveal themselves to Wesker at any moment to get rid of the infection. And it's not something they can just ignore, because if you leave it long enough, you basically become exposed and permanently hindered. So Wesker has some very good pressure. He also has the biggest terror radius in the game, so any stealth builds are out of the question for Wesker. He's a very map-wide killer, a very map-wide pressure build killer, I think. It's harder to hug tech with them, since behaviour like removing hug techs. But still, good Weskers can still glide around objects pretty well. It's a very nice skill ceiling. It's very similar to Blight. This killer's very fun to play against. I really hope they don't. I don't think he needs any more changes after this, to be honest. I think he's happy where he is. So next is the Unknown. This is probably a bit of a contentious pick, but so on the PTB at the moment, his brown add-on has become base kit, and a couple of his other add-ons got nerfed, but it doesn't really affect his placement too much. I think they nerfed the one that makes it so everyone's weakened when a gen's completed. Unknown, basically, from my point of view, just has a better Nemesis power. The UVX is a different projectile we've seen in DBD before. You can bounce it off walls, and the explosion as well can also go through walls. And for survivors to remove this infection, I think it's called the weakened status. I'm just going to call it infection, it's a bit easier. For survivors to remove this infection, they have to look at you. They have to line of sight you. It's like Ghostface for survivors, which will slowly drain the power. If you know how to play around this, the Unknown can be very, very strong and very, very powerful in the chase. As even if you shoot So if a survivor drops a pallet, even if you shoot the other side of the pallet, if you time it right, the explosion from the ball still damages them or still weakens them. And if you keep the weakened status effect on survivors, it could be very hard for them to get some long chases on you. He also has his hallucinations spawning around the map, which are very, very good at starting new chases, keeping the pressure on other survivors. Survivors can get rid of the hallucinations, but if they have the weaken effect, it's like Demogorgon, you'll get told that they're doing it. I think the teleport being an instant teleport as well is very game-changing, as it allows you to get a lot of free hits on survivors that are trying to dispel. Although good teams will know to dispel when you're hooking someone or picking up, basically when they know you're not going to teleport. I think he struggles on maps like Ormond, where like the big open fields, where it's easier for survivors to remove weakened. But on maps with a lot of walls, like Temple of Purgation, or even just indoor maps like Larry's, Unknown's thrives just because you can't get rid of the weaken effect. He ends up if you get good with the UVX projectile, it's very satisfying and it's very, very good. I think this killer is extremely underrated. He has a very strong projectile and a very easy way to just teleport around the map and pressure the gens. So he doesn't really struggle on big maps, although he struggles where with his low line of sight, where it's easy to remove the weakened. But there's ways to play around that. So for that reason, I put Unknown here. So Pyramid Head. So Pyramid Head is a killer I adore quite a lot. I very enjoy him. I think he's my second most played behind Singularity. He's got a decent chase power and anti-loop mechanic with the trails. Sometimes I've seen a lot of survivors that just try to avoid the trails as much as possible, and then some confident survivors will just walk through them like it's nothing. Because his range attack is quite easy to predict, although you can catch survivors in some animations. Although it's a bit like Huntress, where there's that mind game there with the pallet, where like, are they going to drop it, are they not? It's good survivors know how to play around that. So Pyramid Head's main strength comes from the cages. I think if he just had the range attack and he would probably be in B tier. It's the cages. So these cages, if you manage to cage survivors, you can play extremely, extremely mean. Because basically, when a survivor is saved from a cage, you'll get a notification. Although you can't stay near the cage because it will move. But any anti-hook perks, any anti-tunnel perks will not activate if you're freed from a cage. So there's no borrowed time, there's no decisive strike. Anything like that is disabled, and it's so easy for Pyramid Head to just tunnel someone out the game. If think about it, if I torment someone, down them, cage them, I hear the notification go off, I go back over, down them again, and they're on the hook, and they're already on the death phase. It's so easy for Pyramid Head to just play so mean and get the people out of the game. So, his main two problems are large maps, like a lot of other killers. Survivors can crouch over the trails and will get tormented. I don't think a lot of people realise that from my games. And the other one is his add-ons. The add-ons are terrible. Pyramid Head's probably is the worst add-ons out of any killer. The only add-ons you should really use are the range ones. I think there's one green and one yellow one. Everything else is it's just bad. I think that any other killer, out of all the killers, Pyramid Head needs an add-on when you look out of all of them, because they're just bad. They're terrible. But otherwise, really a pretty strong killer if you want to get message abuse in the end-game chat. But otherwise, again, still Pyramid Heads. You can time the animations when the survivor's locked in drop or a vault or a slide. You can still hit them with Punishment of the Damned. Although, again, it doesn't work on ramped objects. Even just a little raised, it just won't work. You have to time it very well. It only spawns in front of you. It doesn't go on slope surfaces. But otherwise, the killer I already enjoy. So I'll put him up here, so I might be a little bit biased. But next is Huntress. So Huntress is a very strong chase power anti-loop tool, although she is extremely map dependent. Some loops she just can't throw any hatchets over, and she's just forced to hold W. I'm thinking in my head right now I've got the RPD loop in like the green locker room, where there's the lockers are basically walls and she can't throw over them. She's forced to just M1 to hold W, and she's 110 killer, so that is a huge weakness. She has, again, no movement, so it is quite hard for her to pressure large maps, although again you can get some sneaky cross-map hatchets. On big open maps she can get some nice hatchet throws, like almonds, low benches, and stuff like that. Although maps with tall walls, like Eyrie of Crows, she can sometimes struggle on. It is very easy to snowball with Huntress and get 4 people on the ground, I think, if there's no unbreakables. Her add-ons are okay, some are a bit useless. They removed the OP add-on combo with the insta-down hatchets, so that did hurt her viability a little bit. I think she is suffering from power creep at the moment. I think Unknown is just a better version of Huntress. He does everything she does, except a little bit better, and he can teleport across the map. I think what Huntress brings to the table, Huntress will always still be one of those killers that a good player will do well. She's probably one of the most picked killers in the game, because she's free, that's a given. And she's relatively simple to understand and pick up, but she's very map dependent, and I think that hurts her quite a bit. So next is Artist. I'll be honest, I do not play this killer a lot. Main reason I have her is because of her really OP perks. Well, they're not OP anymore, but I played her a little bit and watched some videos on some good Artist plays. And so she's very, very strong once you learn her power. She's very good anti-loop. Very strong anti-loop that can force survivors to leave certain strong pallets or force themselves to get hit. She's very good at forcing hits on survivors, and she's very good at getting map information by launching the crows. Her add-ons are okay. Could be a lot better, but I think very strong artists will take advantage of dispelling crows. I think a lot of people don't realize that information. You can see people through walls. I think she's really good on some indoor maps. There's a lot of straight corridors. I think for me, while playing her, a big problem was a few funky line of sight hitboxes. Sometimes I'd fire a crow head, but the survivor would still get dispelling crows instead of getting hit. But otherwise, a very rewarding killer, a very underrated killer. She does not get played very often. I think it's because of her skill ceiling. On your first game as Artist, you'll probably get walked over, but oh well. Now we have our currently newest killer, Dracula. So Dracula, I like to say, it's an all-in-one killer. Him and Vecna are very similar, except Dracula has a lot shorter cooldowns. So let's start off with Wolfform. Wolfform has a very forgiving hitbox and its Pounce. He basically has a Wesker dash that doesn't go as far. His bat form is like Spirit's Phasing. Catch up to survivors pretty easily. I've seen some very good clips of Dracula being able to catch up to survivors and down them. Hellfire is like Pyramid Head attack, although it's not too reliable, as it sometimes goes over things, sometimes doesn't. He's an extremely versatile killer, though. I think he's one of the few killers that, obviously all killers will do better on a shorter map, smaller map, but he sort of doesn't really mind, because the bat can teleport across the map, the wolf can handle the loops, obviously, but I wouldn't say he's necessarily strong in any of these areas. He just sort of has a decent power in each one, and like that all added together gives him a very strong and versatile playstyle. He sort of has an answer to everything the survivors can throw at him, but again, he's not super strong in any of these areas. All of these powers are sort of weaker versions of other killers, like Wolfform is just a shorter Wesker dash. and stuff like that. Before they changed him, I would have put him B tier, but recently they changed his cooldowns for his transformation, and it's kind of made him ridiculous. I'm kind of tempted to put him higher, but I've put him at low A for now. I think he is probably the strongest possibility of moving up though, because these cooldowns are ridiculous. And he's a very versatile killer. I'm very happy with him actually. Very strong killer. Moving down a tier, we're now on the B tier. So next we've got Hag. Hag used to be a very strong killer, although the changes over the years have certainly brought her down a level. So Hag has some amazing map pressure once she sets up. She's amazing on small maps, and she can instantly teleport around the map and just get a lot of pressure on survivors with some decent add-ons to boot. However, she has a lot of counterplay. Survivors being able to wipe traps, and just one stealthy survivor being able to set off your traps while you're picking someone up or chasing someone else can be a huge pain. Good survivors know how to do this. They'll try and set off your traps when you don't want them to, almost. But you know, sometimes people don't get the timing right and they can blunder. You know, setting off traps at the wrong time can be hugely beneficial to you. Hag could be very partial to a lot of slugging because of this. But otherwise, a strong killer with a lot of counterplay, so it's hard to put her higher than this for me. Now we have Vecna, who I compared to Dracula earlier. So Vecna spells are a lot more powerful than Dracula's transformation, for example, but they have bigger cooldowns. So let's talk about them. So his strong chase and anti-loop tools are the two main ones are Mage Hand and Flight of the Damned. Flight of the Damned has a very precise mechanic with it, where if you can plant it on top of someone while they're throwing a pallet down and get a guaranteed hit. This can be a bit hard to pull off, but once you learn the timing, survivors can do nothing about it. There's nothing they can do. And the other one is Mage Hand, which requires some precise timing as well, because it doesn't block the pallet for very long, although survivors that try and camp the pallet to get a cheeky stun will often just end up getting hit. Although good survivors will know to just keep running around the loop while Mage Hand's blocking it, and they'll be able to get back to the pallet and throw it down when Mage Hand disappears. So it's all about timing with these two spells. Dispelling Sphere is one of the few things that can detect distortion, because it gives killer instinct, and it disables any magic items the survivor has. This doesn't disable the Vecna items though, that's very important. The other one is Flight, which is probably the worst of the four spells in my opinion. It's decent at map traversal, but I think my main use for it is when you injure someone and then you can fly up to them, catch up to them. Although there's a huge delay when you're finished flying, so you're very unlikely to get another hit. Everything is very easy to play around if the survivor knows what they're doing, and a lot of it requires very precise timing for the killer end. So this killer, I think, is a very high skill ceiling, although he benefits from his mechanic of magic items. The items are meant to counter his spells, but the whole thing ends up helping Vecna a lot because it distracts survivors. It makes them waste time getting items instead of doing gens. The two items, the Eye and Hand of Vecna, are okay. They're not super strong on the survivor end. I think so. The hand will make it so when you hop in a locker, you'll teleport across the map. But again, you can see who has the Hand of Vecna. So if you're chasing someone that's a decently far away, you know they're just going to jump in a locker. So, and the Eye of Vecna is similar, except that when you jump in a locker, I believe it makes you see him through the map and hides your scratch marks and stuff. So they're not amazingly strong. And again, it probably won't help in the heat of a chase too much. Because again, you need to be in a locker for a few seconds, I believe, for the Hand of Vecna to teleport you. I might be wrong about that though. So yeah, the mechanic of magic items helps Vecna just because it keeps survivors off of gens. They're too busy opening chests, and there's a lot of luck as well. Like you can get some passive injuries when they turn into mimics. But again, his cooldowns hurt him. The best add-on is the one that fixes your cooldowns. Some of the add-ons are okay. The one that makes Flight of the Damned one skeleton but doesn't... I think it's what it injures you even if you crouch is okay, but it's an Uri. Yeah, the main thing with this killer is precise timing mixed with high cooldowns make it very difficult to do well. But it's very fun and has a very high kill rate because, again, survivors just waste all their time getting items instead of doing gens. So next is Xenomorph. I'm gonna be honest, I really don't enjoy playing this killer. I love Alien, but it's just not a playstyle for me, but we'll see. So Xeno has a very strong chase power with the tail, and it's very hard to play around it. Survivors basically have a lose-all situation most of the time if you know what you're doing with the tail. Xenomorph can teleport around the map easily, and these teleports cannot be removed. There's nothing the survivors do about the bunkers that Xenomorph can climb out of, although it's not an instant teleport. It's more of it's the underground tunnels you have to crawl through yourself. The flame turrets are very easily played around. They don't really do much. A lot of survivors waste their time setting up a lot of them when Xenomorph can easily play around it, and again, it's not a huge cooldown to get crawler mode back anyway. The low camera can make things a bit difficult on some loops. Again, even the tail can't counter every loop in the game. Some very strong pallets, although again, if you're behind, it's got a very forgiving range, so if a survivor drops a pallet too early, you can easily just hit them and it will be fine. So next, I have put Pinhead. I think Pinhead's main power comes from playing around the box that spawns. So if a survivor doesn't complete the box, a chain hunt will spawn, and it basically stops everyone around the map from doing any gens. I mean, you can still do gens, most people will still try, it just slows it down massively. So good survivors will know when to do the box and when not to do the box. I think the main thing here is one weak link can doom the entire team. If a survivor tries to do the box when Pinhead is nearby, he can interrupt it with his chain, down that survivor, pick up the box, and suddenly everyone's in a chain hunt and there's nothing they can do about it. The chains themselves are decent in chase. Sometimes it can make you a hit, but a lot of the time it sort of just slows them down. They're quite precise and quite a little bit difficult to control for the reward you get. Although again, it's something. It's not. He's not just an M1 killer. He's still strong on some certain tiles. But again, it doesn't stun survivors. It won't stop them from doing anything. The main thing here is the box. So Pinhead is naturally a lot better on maps like Midwich, with 2 floors where someone more likely to run into someone that's doing the box, because as well the box makes the holder oblivious, so they won't know that Pinhead is nearby. The main weakness, like a lot of other killers, is big maps where survivors and good survivors that know when to do the box. So they'll often do it when you're chasing someone else. They know you're away from the map, or you're picking up and hooking someone, basically. But again, all it takes is one mistake on the survivor end, and you can grab the box and doom everyone. You used to be able to drop the box with Franklin's. They removed that a while ago, so it's not as strong. You do have to down the box holder to get a hold of it now, so that can be a bit susceptible if a strong looper picks up the box. You can teleport to the people, someone solving the box, but it's not too practical because the survivor has a lot of information. But it's a very long animation with a lot of time to prepare for you appearing near them, and you don't really appear that close to them either. And it's also luck based. Good survivors can abuse it a little bit and force you to teleport on the other side of a vault, or do the box near a pallet, or something like that. But again, occasionally you'll catch someone off guard. People don't usually expect you to teleport to the box, so it's a very fun killer, but not probably above average in terms of strength. Next is the twins. So the twins got a rework on a PTB, made them the best killer in the game, so they cancelled that very quickly. Twins is very good. I view it as Twins is very good if survivors do not have the perks to counter it. The main one being Unbreakable, because Twins are just naturally good at slugging. It's just the way the power works at Victor, because if Charlotte's across the map she can't pick up a down survivor. It's just easier to slug people. They are susceptible to some very weird and janky map physics. Most of it has been ironed out with the PTB of the rework. They did get a few nice quality of life changes, but otherwise they can be strong, but they're not very fun to play against for most people. I think is you basically have one chance with Victor to hit someone, otherwise you're done for, because once you mince the pounce, survivors can kick you and it's over. You can equip add-ons to counter this, make it possible for them to kick you. Sorry, excuse me. You have one chance to do this, but otherwise it's very they're not as bad as they once were. They're still, they're above average. It's also their play, like there's a common meme in the community that no one plays the Twins. That does benefit them a lot, because most people won't know what to do against the Twins correctly. This goes for a lot of the higher tier killers as well, like Artist. But I hope they do get another chance at a rework soon. I think just nothing like what it was in the PTB, please. So next is Knight, who coincidentally did also get a rework, except this one was very, very good. And they removed his global cooldown on guards, which is amazing. I'm almost tempted to move him higher, but I've put him here for now. I don't want to be too biased. I do play a lot of Knight, but so the guard cycles make it so you can now choose your guards instead of being forced to use one of every one. And I like this dynamic of sending a guard, choosing your guard, basically the jailer or the assassin, to chase someone. So the assassin moves faster, gives someone deep wound, but doesn't have as long a hunt time as the jailer. So it's instant. Do you want to keep the survivor busier for longer, or do you want the extra chance of getting downed? The guards can still be played around pretty easily. They're not as bad as their AI is not nearly as bad as it once was. Their AI used to be awful to play with, because they're just useless. They'd just be useless to get stuck on everything. He's a lot funner than he was. Being able to choose your guards allows for a lot of strategy. His anti-loop is a lot weaker with the hunt changes, with the change being survivor's hunt time will go down, will shorten if you're nearby when they're being hunted. Although this doesn't make a huge difference in some loops, because again, the time it takes for the guard to disappear, you probably would have already hit them anyway. So it's not that big of a difference. I think the Knight's biggest problem is big maps and actually second floors, because he can't send his guards through walls. And even though you'd think on paper him being able to send a guard to damage a gen from across the map is good, but again, if there's a survivor on the gen, they'll just continue working on it after you kick it. But you can spawn a guard on them, which keeps them busy, but then another survivor can just hop on that gen. And then a lot of survivors don't know about the flags, or at least don't, from what I see, don't try and grab them a lot. If you don't know, the guards leave a flag when they begin a hunt, and if you pick up that flag, the guard will despawn. So if you spawn a guard from across the map to chase someone, they can just loop them in a circle and pick up the flag once it's spawned, and the guard will disappear. It's also made the big one, I think it's the Carnifex it's called. You don't really want to use him to hunt anyone, because his hunt time got moved to the jailer. You mainly want to use him to break pallets, which the Knight is very good at. If a survivor pre-drops a pallet, the Knight can break it instantly and go in for the hit. But again, that doesn't help in the anti-loop. Good survivors will they'll communicate to one of those. Like, he's used the Carnifex, the global cooldown was removed, but there's still individual cooldowns for each guard, and you can't have two guards out at once. The other one will despawn if you spawn another one. So, very fun killer though. I attempted to move him up, but I'll leave him here for now. Next is Doctor. So the Doctor has the best anti-stealth power in the game. If stealth doesn't matter, the Doctor will be the best killer in the game. and he has some very strong add-ons. He's a terror for the lower MMR, but yeah, he has some very good add-ons. Some nice combinations of things as well. I really like Doctor's like choice of illusions you can do. I think the best one is probably the one that spawns the red stain on top of the survivor, because it removes your own red stain, which makes it harder to mind game around pallets and stuff like that. However, his main tool for looping and chase is shocking you. Even if you're max madness, the shock will stun you for about 2.5 seconds. However, this timing is extremely precise. If you do it too early or too late, the survivor will be able to vault still. If you do it too late, if you do it too late, they'll already be in the animation and it does nothing. It doesn't cancel animation. You have to do it right before they hit the button, basically. So that's quite a big skill ceiling, and it's very hard to get it down. But there's no reload or anything like that, no cooldown. You can just spam the shock. So it's not the worst thing in the world to deal with. You can learn it mid-chase, and sometimes you just get lucky. Some loops aren't very strong. The Doctor can shock someone. And even if worst case scenario is you move on, there's still Madness 3, you still can't do gens, you still have to waste time to get out of Madness 3. Again, Doctor's big weakness is big maps, whereas Shock sometimes just can't hit anyone, like the big radius one. He's very good on 2-floor maps like the game or Midwich, where just everyone's going to be screaming 24/7. Everyone's going to be infected with madness very easily. He's very good at just pressuring survivors, keeping them off gens, although again, some very precise timing for actual anti-loop. He'll destroy lower MMR teams, but again, experienced players that will loop and don't fall for the illusions, or not fall for that, don't care about the illusions. It's that for reason he's in beta, but he's got some really good add-ons. So. Next is the Wraith. A bit of an underrated killer, but you just see a lot of playtime. So. The Wraith, main strength is his ability to just run around the map very, very quickly and get those first hits on unsuspecting survivors. You can body block people in corners, you can body block them just in general. The main counter to the Wraith is probably Sprint Burst, or maybe even Light if there's a vault nearby, because if he goes for the effort of uncloaking, you can Sprint Burst and deny him the hit, wasting time. He can body block pallets and loops. He's got some strong chase tools. A good Wraith will have to know the loops and know where to body block, because if the loop is short, the survivor can just run to the other side. If you're stunned, invisibility just kick you out of it, and you basically waste the wind. I don't know what it's called, but the speed boost from uncloaking. His add-ons are pretty okay. The all-seeing one is probably the best. The silent bell can catch a few people off guard, but the Wraith's breathing gives them away most times, so people even decent players will hear him coming from a mile away. And as well as some loops are just impossible to mind game, and maps like the game, aka Pallet Town, if you body block a pallet, Scythe will just move on to the next one that's close by. But he's still pretty strong, very good at hit and run play style, I'll find. But I'm tempted to move him down, to be honest, but I think he can be pretty strong. It just takes a bit of skill. So next is Nemesis, who was originally in the C tier, but he got a few changes recently. His infection rates are a lot easier to get. It's a lot easier to get to tier 3, it's a lot easier to get to tier 2. The new add-on combination, Licker's Tongue and the other one, I can't remember what it's called, but are very strong. But Nemesis still has all of his issues, even if he can get to tier 3 very quickly. The zombies, most of the time, useless. A good zombies are ones that go near gens, keep survivors off gens, but even then, they can play around that. It just wastes a little bit of time. You know, obviously sometimes you'll get a zombie that blocks the loop, you know, downs the survivor for you. But these are very rare examples. Most of the time, especially on big maps, zombies just wander around in the middle of nowhere. He can easily build up to tier 3 now and snowball quite easily once the vaccines start going. Tier 3 is a very strong tool if you know how to hit the tentacle. It's got very long range now as well, although even then the tentacle is pretty useless on certain loops with high walls. You know, Nemesis is quite a tall killer, so he can still hit over most obstacles. But again, loops that just have walls instead of like, I'm talking like floor to ceiling walls, just can't do anything against it. Nemesis probably has potential to move up because these changes are quite new. So, but otherwise, you know, he's not as bad as he once was. He's definitely doing a lot better than he was. The zombie AI is not really as bad as it was. Just a lot of his add-ons are kind of pointless though, except like obviously the liquor one and the other one, but a lot of them affect the zombies, and the zombies don't do anything, really. Most games, you'll find they just, occasionally their use will be telling you that there's a survivor near them, so you can go over there. But otherwise, yeah. He's started to become above average, though. So moving down to the C tier, we start off with Demogorgon. I think Demogorgon is a good example of power creep in this game. So what I mean is, your main power for chase will be the shred. It's a leap forward, decent range, but on newer maps where the loops curve and twist, I think Toba Landing is a very good example of this. It is very hard to hit a shred during a loop. You sort of just have to shred early when they drop the pallet to break it. Now that's not all bad, because it's very good at catching people in vaults. You know, some vaults you can shred them. The portals are pretty decent. Survivors can close them without much drawback. You'll get a notification, but only if you've teleported through it once. So coordinated teams can sort of overwhelm you and just delete your portals, then you have to go all the way back to place it back down. Some of the add-ons are really strange. He's sort of forced to go in a straight line with Demogorgon, where if you think of someone like Huntress, she can throw around these maybe it's not a good example, maybe something like Wesker, who can deal with these twists and turns. Demo's locked into a straight line pounce. It's not too reliable on a lot of loops. I do actually like Demogorgon as a killer. I think he's very well balanced. Maybe do with a little bit of adjustments with the add-ons. He's very fun to play and fun to play against, just a bit on the weaker side, although again, C tier is still average. I want to make that clear. Most killers in DBD are average or above average, I think, these days. It's a lot more balanced now. We'll talk about the killers that are below average in a bit, but Demogorgon is a very good example of a well-rounded killer. So next I've put Leatherface. So if you want to end the game in one move, play this killer. No, but seriously, Leatherface is a little bit map dependent. With some maps just don't have vaults. I think like something like some maps like Cold Winds just have big open areas, so it's not much they can do about it. His anti-slug perks also hurt Leatherface, because you're sort of encouraged to get, you know, if there's a group of survivors, try and get them, you know, some good add-ons that can, you know, replenish your charges when you're swinging, get some multiple downs and pretty some good pressure. But you know, things like Unbreakable, so I can get off the ground pretty easily. He struggles. He's no map traversal at all. So it's big maps like a lot of other killers. Windows are the bane of Leatherface's existence. Maps with a lot of faults can be a big problem, although he has some pretty, unlike before, Leatherface has some pretty nice mind games you can actually do about it now. Yeah, I think he's a very well-rounded killer nowadays. I think it's just a lot of people don't like playing against him because he has the reputation of the hook camping killer, although it's really not viable anymore, especially since his chainsaw does not go through endurance. It gets treated like a normal attack. It won't insta down someone. Although he can still go for the rescuer, obviously. Next is Deathslinger, a killer I'll admit I do not have a lot of experience with. He's good on maps with low walls, and, he doesn't have to rely on locker reloads. A lot of similarities to Huntress line of sight, basically, except unlike Huntress, he is a little bit limited with his range because the chain will break before he can reel them in sometimes. His add-ons are alright, could be a bit stronger. He's 110 killer, so he can struggle to catch up on bigger maps as well. He can struggle to walk around the map. You can do some really nasty shots through gaps and cracks in the wall. It's really fun to do. Survivors can body block the reel in to stop you downing someone. There's some counterplay, survivors maps with high walls or just breaking line of sight. It's very strong against this killer. He used to have a trick with his terror radius, although they removed that a while ago. He now has a regular terror radius, so he can't really sneak up on people anymore. So moving on, we have the Dredge. Dredge has some nice changes recently. Dredge has an okay anti-loop. It's very easily played around, although good dredges can obviously play around them. It's a very nice mind game. I think it's a very well balanced mind game, although a bit useless in certain loops. The main problem with this killer, and it's a very big one, is locker spawns. Certain maps just do not have enough lockers for the Dredge to teleport to. And cold range, there are some areas of that map that have 0 lockers, and the Dredge cannot get around the map with ease. But the reverse is also true. Maps with a lot of lockers, like Midwich, the Dredge is very powerful on. It's just this map reliance hinders him a lot. And some good counterplay is, so if you have for example, if you have 2 lockers next to each other, you only want to lock one of them because of the game's mechanics. If a Dredge teleports, even if he teleports, he aims at the locker that isn't locked, the game will put him in the locked locker. It will automatically move you into the locked locker. He's forced to come out of the locked locker, and when the locker is destroyed, it is permanently gone. They can just shut the other one, and the same thing will happen. It stops the element of surprise, stops you getting that first hit, gives survivors time to run away from you. So another aspect is the Nightfall. Nightfall is a big noob stomper killer, which I'll go into a bit. A lot of these low tier killers have a lot of abilities that can kill inexperienced players. Nightfall is a big one. A lot of people get overwhelmed. Most people do not play this game. Most people play this game in normal conditions. There will be glares on the screen. It's very, very hard to see in Nightfall if you're not in a properly lit room. For that reason, Dredge probably has a decent high kill rate at low MR. Because people just get overrun, people get scared. It's very easy to snowball in a way in Nightfall, as well as because the teleport is almost instant, and you get killer instinct when you leave lockers. So your best add-ons here will be the ones that increase Nightfall, I think. But other than, Dredge just relies on locker spawns in the map, and sometimes it can really struggle. And just his anti-chase power, well, like I said, it's well balanced, it's nice mind games, it's not strong like other killers. Compared to anyone else, the Spirit can do the same thing with that add-on. but she can also use her regular power. Very fun killer though. I really love the Dredge. I just wish they need to add more lockers in them. Now we move on to Sadako. I really like Sadako a lot. I love killers that change the traditional playstyle of D&D. And on paper that doesn't really look like that because she's a 115 killer, normal terror radius. Except if you want to take advantage of Sadako's strengths properly, you don't really want to go for hooks. Obviously, hooking is encouraged, it locks in condemned stats, but Sadako's main strength is the condemned mechanic. Without it, she's just a Wraith that can't body block. So I'll go over her strengths first. Sadako is probably the best killer for killing new players. This is probably why she has a high kill rate. She probably still does have a high kill rate because of her ability. People that don't know what they're doing against Sadako will build up condemned and get themselves killed instantly. She also has a bit of the old Freddy in her where it is impossible to body block. So if you're trying to get someone out of the game, you can phase through the people trying to body block and smack them. Demanifesting does not slow you down, which can be good for some mind games. But she does. The big issue is she has 0 anti-loop or anti-chance power. She relies on perks for anti-loop, I'd say. But again, it's difficult because she doesn't play like a traditional killer. I think I played a lot of her. I think she's one of my most played killers. My experience is better to sort of a hit and run. You'll injure someone and then teleport, and then if someone's near a TV, teleport to that to condemn them. But good survivors can play around this very easily. Sadako you just have to keep. It's like Singularity, but a lot less reward because you have to keep track of who's got the tape, how many condemned stats. You can't see the condemned stacks of survivors. The survivors can see it, but you cannot. So you don't know if you lose track of who's condemned and who isn't. You will probably lose the game. And then once the survivor grabs the grabs the tape and inserts it into a DV, they lose most of their condemned, and that's a lot of your work and progress lost. But again, when they are fully condemned, and it does happen, I've done it against high MMR, I've even done it in high MMR lobbies, you get to kill them. But again, you still need to down them in the first place, and good teams will body block, will do everything in their power, and they can still remove the condemned when fully condemned. Which is good. I'm not saying that should be removed, it's just a thing, you know. I do really like I said, I really love it when killers have their own playstyles, and I think Sadako should be a little bit stronger. I'm not sure, she used to be really, really strong in one of the PTBs where they made the TV teleporting map wide. So you could spam your TV teleport and condemn everyone very, very easily. But she can't do that anymore, which makes her map dependent. On big maps it's very hard to spread your condemned. Smaller maps it's a lot easier. Maps like the game. It's a very difficult killer to balance, I think. So I don't think they're gonna try and change her too much in the future, unfortunately, as much as I like her to. So Clown has very strong chase and anti-loop power, but no movement abilities. And this hurts him on bigger maps, you know. Some maps as well. The bottles just don't do a lot, even though they are strong anti-loops. On strong loops, they just don't change anything. You know, it'll slow down the survivors, but if they've already thrown down the pallet, it doesn't change too much. And the yellow gas can also affect survivors, so if you misplay, you can end up just speed boosting the survivors. Some add-ons are just useless. So the instant add-on only lets you bring one bottle, which on Clown is a huge hindrance. Huge. I think Clown's main strength is his ability to just spam bottles, because it's, again, like Deathslinger, no locker reload. He does get slowed down a lot on reload, you know, gives his survivors a lot of time. A good clown, you know, with killers like this with very strong chase power but nothing else, you can snowball the game just by downing people quickly. But you know, good survivors, you don't interrupt them. You don't interrupt them throwing down palace. You don't interrupt the vault. You just slow them down. So he's a very a bit of a weaker killer. I remember when back then when they added these yellow bottles, they said they were reworking. I honestly wonder what would happen if they made it so those yellow bottles didn't affect survivors at all. I wonder if that'd be too strong. But anywho, clown is down here because of that. Next is Trickster, who got a rework, who's no longer 110, is now a 115 killer. Well, it wasn't recently, it was a while ago, but God, I do not like this killer at all. I think he encourages very bad playstyle. Trickster's main power or main strength comes from maps, and if you catch a survivor in the open, they are dead. There is nothing they can do. They are just dead. If you catch a survivor of main event in the open, they are just going down on the floor. But alternatively, if you're in a loop, walls, or indoors, you know, there is nothing you can do. It's very hard to get downs, especially there's a few strange hitboxes as well. It does have the locker reload. It's very easy to just waste knives. You burn through your knives. The best add-ons are probably the ones that give you more. Although he is now 115 killer, so he doesn't have to rely on his power. But I think they nerfed him too hard. I think even rework Trickster would probably still be down here, but I just don't like the direction they taken him. We'll see what happens in the future. They might be too scared to touch him like a lot of other killers, but we'll see. So next is Ghostface. Ghostface has some very strong stealth with a good threat of an insta-down in chase, but he does rely on maps for this. Maps that are easy to spot him. I'm thinking specifically Eyrie of Crows. It's very easy to stop Ghostface in his tracks, and he basically becomes an M1 killer. And once you're kicked out of Stalk, you put on cooldown. So even if you 99 someone, you either have to wait for your cooldown to come back, or if you hit them, they'll lose their 99. They'll lose their Stalk progress. Good teams will kick you out of Stalk consistently, or just, you know, they won't let you get the 99. As well as good survivors can hear you, you do make noises. I think it's the sound of his cloak. And you know, stealth killers are notoriously good in low MMR, but notoriously bad at higher MMR, and Ghostface is a very good example of this. It's a very fun killer. I used to main him. Again, map reliance, you know, it's like a few other killers we'll talk about in a minute. Relies on certain maps to do well. But yeah, we'll see. Anyway, moving on to below average. So I want to say you can still do well with these killers. Most of them probably do pretty well on lower MLR teams, but they sort of, compared to the other ones at least, they really lack in some areas. So I'll move on. First on, we've got the pig. The pig has been notoriously nerfed throughout the years. Reverse bear traps aren't really a threat anymore. She can't see the boxes anymore. I believe the traps don't go off when you leave from the exit gates. It's just very... They obviously, if you don't get rid of the traps, you die, which does impact people that don't know what they do. But usually, it doesn't affect it unless the pig is playing very, very mean and just interrupts you at every move. But again, she can't see the boxes anymore, so it's very hard to do that. Anti-loop is the dash attack with the ambush, which can be strong on certain loops, but it's a bit easily played around because you can see it coming quite easily. You have to be in a pretty bad position for her to catch you off guard. Obviously, stealth can get some nice first hits. but again, her stealth isn't that great. On certain maps you can see her coming, crouch is pretty obvious. Yeah, she's just been, I think her kill rates on low MMR is what affected her to be nerfed so heavily, but it has affected her more higher MMR playstyle. So that reason she's here. She can still do well, obviously. She does well, and teams waste too much time on the boxes, and there is just a lot of RNG. Sometimes people get the trap off first try, sometimes they do not. So, unfortunately, this is where she is. Next is Legion. Legion has a hit and run play style. If you manage to hit all 4, then the next hit will be a down, which is pretty fun, but really only happens on teams that are way out of position, or if you're lucky on smaller maps. I think Legion is just, you get the first hit and then there's nothing else. You know, obviously you can benefit from perks like Thanatophobia, or perks that benefit from survivors being injured, like New Blood Echo on the PTB. But there's also the survivor side. Resilience, for example, Dead Hard, benefits from being injured. So you essentially have no power against injured survivors because you can't do anything. Yeah, it's very rare you'll get the 5th hit for the down, so once you injure someone, you're basically forced to just hold W and then 1, unless you catch them out off guard, but there's no stealth in your kit, so unless you're running perk, it's not really feasible. Like I said, Legion strong on small maps. If the survivors group together, you can get down on someone. But otherwise, once you injure them, you just have to loop them normally. It's still a fun killer to play and play against, especially. But otherwise, in terms of strength, especially compared to some of these other killers, like the hit and run style of Wraith can do, obviously won't be as instant as Legion, but Wraith can do stuff at loops. Legion really can't. There's a few add-ons that do a few things. I think one of them breaks pallets, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't change. Like, you still can't down people in Frenzy, and I'm glad that doesn't, because it used to when it released, and that was awful to play against. So I don't think Legion would see any changes coming soon. I think they could do with some add-ons being changed to be a bit better. Something to encourage the 5th hit a bit more. I don't really know how they do that, especially in big maps. But otherwise, Legion has always been the case. Next is Myers, Michael Myers. Michael is a worse Ghostface. Basically, it's the way I sum it up. He can't hide from survivors. He's very tall. It's very easy to spot him, especially on some maps like Eerie of Crows. So he's very map reliant. His add-ons are either extremely good or very bad. He's one of the few killers that can kill without hooking anyone. And he starts off worse than the average killer. Like, in tier 1 he has shorter lunge, which really sucks to play with. It does not feel good. He used to be very strong in the early days of DBD. He was considered one of the strongest killers, but power creep and these new maps and just everything else has really knocked him down. Everyone knows what to do against Myers. Just break line of sight, don't let him get the stalk. Yeah. He obviously has some threats. He can threaten to end the game if in tier 3 he downs everyone, or if he's carrying a tombstone piece. But the tombstone piece still requires a lot of stalk. If you're playing on your uppermost to highest level, you can just stop him from getting it in the first place. like I said, if you get a bad map on Myers, you've lost the game. If you try and have fun playing Myers on Eerie of Crows or Cold Wind or a lot of other maps, Obviously he's strong on Larry's, is a notable one, quite famous one. Hawkins as well, he's pretty good on that. But otherwise, like, he's just, Michael either will kill everyone or kill no one. And that's just always been the case, I think. So next is Freddy. Freddy's very sad for me because I really want Freddy to be a lot better than he is in DBD right now. His anti-loop is next to useless. The blood pools, really, you need to place a few of them to really guarantee the hit on the survivor. It's worse version than Clown Busted, and you can't even place it ranged. You have to place it in your feet. It's teleport. It's very easily played around. You can fake it. You can get some mind games in there. But again, it's very easily played around. His add-ons don't change much. You can get dream palettes, which are worse. Most survivors can just play around them because survivors not in the dream world will see that they're not fake palettes. Speaking of, a survivor that's not in the dream world, you basically an M1 killer. He's decent at catching new players off with his lullaby, but when you're in the dream world, he does no terror radius. He also, this is a point Ots made in one of his videos, is Freddy doesn't have a nuclear option. Most every other killer has sort of like a nuclear option where you can play mean, you can equip some nasty add-ons, some nasty map offerings and do extremely well. Freddy doesn't have that. He can't do anything like that, anything similar. The meanest thing you can do with Freddy is make people start in the dream world. You compare that to some other killer. Compare that to Myers, who can run Tombstone and get a guaranteed kill at the start of the game. It's just... So Freddy is such a high potential killer for power. I really hope they rework him again, or even just revert him back to his original state. It was weaker, but it was more unique. It was a lot more fun, I think, in my opinion. So I really, out of every killer on this list, I want Freddy to be changed the most, because he's an insanely cool killer. It's just insanely iconic, and he deserves a lot more better, I think. So next is Trapper. Trapper just has everything that every killer struggles with, up to 11 big maps he struggles with. He has to set up his traps around the map, which survivors can see you do, so they will know not to go near that. I'm just like most other setup killers do struggle with this a lot, but with Trappers, survivors can just walk up and snap the trap shut. All you have to do to win against Trapper is look at the floor. Obviously he has some good things. He can run some mean add-ons. If you go down and he hooks you in the basement, the game is over. That person is dead. If it's a solo survivor team, Trapper does a lot better because people don't call out where the traps are. They probably don't want to change him because he's good at low MMR. People actually walk into traps because they don't know how to look at the floor. He's got some buffs over the years, like the haste, it starts with more traps, but it doesn't change a lot. Again, he's also very map dependent. Maps without grass, he sucks. You can see him on the floor. Like, he's got some mean add-ons, like his reds, Eerie's, the Trapper bag, but even then, it's quite easily played around. But again, you can maps like Macmillan or just maps with a lot of grass, pretty good. But he just struggles. He struggles most games if you only have a decent MMR. Because if survivors break your traps, or not break them, but if survivors stop your traps, you are just an M1 killer at the end of the day. If even just a survivor that runs you around an area that you don't have trapped, you can't do anything. Trapping a loop, mid-loop, is a bit more feasible these days because of the haste you get from it, but even then, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't stop the slide. They just run away to the next loop. It's a shame with he's literally the mascot of the game, but I don't think they will change Trapper. I think he's always going to be like this. And yeah, I don't know what else they would do to be honest. And if it weren't for the most recent PTB, Trapper would be the worst killer in the game, in my opinion. But someone else has taken that title recently. Skull Merchant. In the most recent PTB, Skull Merchant got probably the biggest nerf in DBD history. Her drones were gutted to the point where it is more feasible to gain Bloodlust than place your drones mid-chase. So she can no longer gain haste. Survivors aren't as hindered as much. The scan line was reduced. There's now 1 instead of 2. She doesn't gain haste at all. So these changes right now are still on PTB. They might not go live, and if they don't go live, then Skull Merchant in her live state, she'll be high C, low B for me. But right now on the PTB, Skull Merchant is the worst killer in Dead by Daylight. And even just her reputation will never be fixed. I know this isn't a balance issue, but people DC against Skull Merchant even when she's not a problem anymore. She was the most hated killer on release. She, like, even design wise, I agree with the sentiment behind that. I think it was a very disappointing reveal. Her power was insanely annoying on release. It encouraged a very campy, unintuitive playstyle. And even when they've reverted it, they've tried to make it better. She still has the reputation. People still insta DC if they see a Skull Merchant. Insta DC when they see a Skull Merchant. Imagine that. Imagine playing Overwatch and you go against Reinhardt and you just leave the game. Every time you go against Reinhardt, you leave the game. Imagine how ridiculous that sounds. Imagine trying to explain that to a non-DBD player. People leave when they see a character in the game. And I don't think it will ever be fixed. And I think this gutting of a nerf is in response to the insta DCs. It's the devs want to remove this behaviour, and the only way they can do it is by making a dog shit in the game. So I don't think they will revert it, to be honest. I would like them to. They might do. There's been quite a community outcry, but I think they just want her to be not to ruin the game, because people DC when they play against her, and they're going to come back to her at a later point. I think they've confirmed that they rework her soon. So yeah, it's not the kind of game balance I want to encourage, to be honest. I think it's a very unhealthy mindset to just sort of destroy something and then, oh, we'll fix it later. It's like, what? But yeah, just my tier list. It's my tier list. Obviously, in my opinions, like I said, public matches. I do think, despite my little rant at the end, DBD is probably in its most balanced state in a long time. A lot more killers are viable. And back in the day, there probably used to be about 3 good ones. Very happy with the new killers they had. There was 3 recent ones: Lich, Dracula, and Unknown are very good killers, very well designed killers. I'm very happy with them. My number 1 changes, like I said, I hope Freddy gets a rework. I hope Skull Merchant's PTB change doesn't go through, as much as I don't like going against her. And that's pretty much it. I don't think it would be a wise move to to sporadically nerf the top tiers. Maybe Billy and Nurse, but even then, I don't think any number nerf will harm them. I think if you want to make them move down a tier, you would have to remove something out of their kit, like Nurse not being able to blink through obstacles, which would be ridiculous. But again, I will probably change my opinion on this. Some of these things is like I said, Nemesis was C. I could easily put Singularity in S. I didn't touch on everything about every single killer because this video would be about 5 hours. I took everything. I promise I took everything into consideration. I just tried to sum it up off the top of my head. You see, my voice is dying at the moment. I don't think I mentioned Singularity's add-ons, but his add-ons are very good. The red one, I think it's a red one that makes everyone spawn slipstreamed, is very good. But yeah, just that's an example for you. That will be it for me.